This video is called Penlogic, the logical system of valence shell structure. And we're really going to be doing some detective work here, trying to figure out what is going on with valence shell dynamics. If you look at the carbon atom here, the valence shell structure tells it that it wants to either add 4 electrons. And so you can see here, if it grabs these 4 hydrogen atoms, then it's taking an electron from each of them. And so the carbon gets up to the neon structure, which is one of the noble gases, at which point it's sort of like it's relaxed. It's in an energy relaxed place. So everything going on for the carbon atom ties in with this thing of trying to get up to the neon structure, or other times the carbon can give away 4 electrons, and then it gets down to the helium atom structure. Helium is also a noble gas, and then it's at rest there with the other atom or atoms holding on to 4 of its electrons. Look here at the sodium atom. It has 1 more proton and thus 1 more electron than the neon atom. And so all it wants to do is give away 1 electron. It's always going to be offering an electron to other atoms, and there are other atoms like fluorine and chlorine that desperately want 1 electron. So that's another example of just the valence shell structure just dominates our whole chemical world. Here you're looking at the neon atom and at argon. These are 2 of the noble gases, and they just don't want to bond at all with anything. Now let me mention here, I've made these atoms through the Moxlogic system, and they both have, you're looking at the 2 main stable forms, but they are not monoisotopic. They have a few different allotropic forms, or different isotopic forms with different numbers of neutrons. And the other ones are not natural non-bonders. They are types that are built naturally to want to bond. Now, they can make changes so that they become non-bonders, but their natural inclination is to bond. But those are their Moxlogic motives. Those are their proton and neutron motives. They're still, the fact is that argon and neon and helium and these other noble gases, they do not form long-term bonds. So it's the valence shell structure that is really controlling things for them, even if it does turn out that they make a lot of short-term bonds, which I think may be the case. This is carbon dioxide. This is where the carbon gives up. The 2 oxygens each take 2 electrons from it, and so it falls down to the helium structure. But so just what's going on with that? Here we're looking at the periodic table of the elements, and all of these elements wind up forming molecules based on valence shell structure, and this just controls, all human life, all the structure of rocks, of everything that we know in existence, of the ordinary matter existence, is completely dominated by this valence shell structure, sort of enforcing upon these Moxlogic atoms that are made up of the protons and neutrons, and telling them what they're going to want to bond, or what bonds they don't want to get, and what bonds they do want to get. And it's a huge part of nature of what's going on, and so we need to understand it. So the detective work we have to do here is with these numbers right here. The helium atom, number 2, it has 2 protons, so 2 electrons. Neon has 10, argon has 18, krypton has 36, xenon has 54, and radon has 86. And we need to, there has to be something going on, some kind of conceptual dynamics of some sort that relate to those numbers. I mean, those, if we find something where there's something going on that fits with those numbers in some way that does not fit with the other numbers, and it clearly seems to tell us that this is creating these shells of energy. That's what the valence shell does, is it has energy shells. And if we can figure this out, then that's what we're here to do tonight. The other thing is there's going to be a tie-in with this with the iron atom, and that's very significant. So we'll get to that in a little while. So what I developed, I figured out the Moxlogic system based on these hexagons, having all these dynamics going on between the hexagonal structures. So I thought, let's take a look and see if maybe pentagons, if there could be some kind of pentagonal structure that might end up having something to do with this valence shell. So I cut out a bunch of pentagons. All electrons spin in two different directions, so I painted them red and blue, or colored them red and blue. And so when you put two of them together, a red one and a blue one, that would make up a helium atom, which would be a noble gas. So it's like saying they don't want to exist on their own. They want to come together and have two of them. So there's a magnetic kind of construct involved or something. If they pull together, you have, the maternal and paternal, or the two sides of the magnet, or something like that. Something sort of comes to rest when you have two pentagons together, and that fits with the helium atom. So then I kept going and came up with this structure made up of 10 pentagons. Now what you see here is there's 5 red, 5 blue, so both the red and blue would be happy there, and they each form a larger level, like a larger shell of pentagonal energies, and the two shells are locked in with each other, as you see here. So everything about this fits with the number 10, fits with the two pentagons. If you're looking empathetically from each perspective, they would both be completely happy, I think, with this setup. And it's an at-rest setup, and so that seems to fit with the 10. And it works where, now look at this diagram, and if you add one more pentagon, like one more electron to this shell, it would want to get rid of that, and that sort of fits. If it is missing one, that's like the fluorine atom. The one with 11 is the sodium atom. If the fluorine has 9, it looks like it would very strongly want to get that 10th one. So it sort of seems to fit with some of the dynamics going on around this. But so the 10 works. So how about 18? Is there an 18 that fits? Well, this is what I came up with, 18. So we know with the Moxlogic how the protons and neutrons sort of overlay each other. And if you have two of these circles overlaying each other like this, sharing that top middle red and the bottom blue, then there's 18 of them. And just like with the helium atom, you sort of have, now you have 9 of each color, and they each make up, they're each part of an individual pentagon. It all just seems to fit. It seems like everybody would be happy here. And it's filled out a second kind of level of structure. And remember, with the valence shell structure, one of the things you start to get are these p orbitals, which are sort of like figure 8 orbitals. And this resembles, I don't know if it's exactly right, but there seems to be sort of a connection where this could fit with the p orbitals possibly. Although the p orbital starts way down at the number 6, and so I don't want to try to give that too much play or whatever. But anyway, so it's it's working so far with this, what I call this the Penlogic system through 18. And so how about going up to 36 and 54 and 86? Well, here is the krypton atom. And you can see now the dynamics are different here. One kind of gets the core and it gets 21 pentagons or electrons. The other one only gets 15, but it makes two perfect pentagonal sort of circles, one within the next. You can see the outer red corners making a larger pentagon, and then there's the smaller red one inside. And so that obviously, I mean, it's the same basic neon, circle of 10, but now you have 5 of them just in overlaying each other. I mean, so it's obviously right, and it obviously fits. Now, so here with xenon, I have to admit to a problem. It is taking 2 of the kryptons and overlaying them, and it makes 2 different pentagons, but it gets a little creepy here. It's sort of, look at the top red, and then it goes out with the next 2, and then it kind of goes down almost like it's making a coffin. It's a pentagon, but it's not, they call a fully symmetrical one a regular pentagon. And this is making more of a coffin-shaped pentagon, and it has an upside-down one in blue. So it is still making the 2 pentagons, and it's still really just an overlay of, now 10 of these different neon circles all overlaying each other. But you can see in the middle there are 2 spots that kind of overlay each other in a funny capacity. I have the blues on top and the reds underneath. That is something that would show up. Chemists who are very familiar with xenon would be able to look at that and say, yeah, there's some strange thing that shows up in the xenon atom where the 2 electrons are whirling around in some crazy orbital thing or something. So I don't know. This is what I've got for xenon, and it's possible that there could be some other structure or something like that. But this, this would be the third example after first the helium just bringing 2 of them together, and then with the number 18, 1 with argon bringing the first 2 neon circles together, and now with xenon bringing 2 of these full krypton sort of more filled out circle things together, but yet it just has this strange overlay. So if it's right, there'll be something strange there, and we'll see it, and we'll know then that this is what's causing that. So this radon, I gotta say, this does almost begin to get a little bit, creepy, but maybe in a good way. I mean, this looks a lot like a human being. You can see like 2 red eyes and kind of a blue nose or something, and then it's got one round set of energies for the legs and another round set of energies for the hands. You can count out almost 5 fingers going out from the, where the wrist bones would go out or something. And I mean, radon is radioactive, so you go down to some small enough level, radon may live for a certain amount of time. Humans don't live forever. We are radioactive. Do we humans grow into a radon structure or something? Because that just has it's very symmetrical, very interesting dynamics, kind of a strange, little bit spooky, because, there's always been an association with the pentagon stuff and evil, and this is a negative. Let me be clear, this electron system is a negative energy structural system. So anyway, that's the radon. We'll move on here. I spend most of my time studying the Moxlogic system. So it has answered every single one. The 2, the 10, the 18, the 36, the 54, and the 86 all fit and all really work. And so we still have to ask the question, what's going on with pentagons? What does that mean? So we'll get to that. But first I want to talk about the iron atom a little bit. So look at the diagram here. When you have a pentagon at the core, it can spin out 5 pentagons in a spiral form going out from there. And you can see on the left, I show it spinning in the other direction, but I kind of have a little bit darkened out there. You can see that this is basically the same structure as the krypton atom, but it's missing a certain number of the pentacards or whatever you'd call them. Okay, iron does 2 things. One, it's absolutely a unique atom. It has a powerfully unique thing that happens right at the iron atom, and it at the number 26 with this iron atom, and it happens both to atoms, but it also happens to stars, to whole solar systems, to stars. So let's first talk about with atoms. What happens is the physicists say that protons push away from each other, and the neutrons get in there and sort of try to help hold things together. And when the atom gets up, it keeps adding on protons and neutrons, but once it gets to the iron atom, the protons are pushing apart so hard that it can't add any more atoms. And so there has to be some kind of, and at the solar level of existence, stars build up iron cores. And they say that the other elements, as the iron cores build up, other elements can't really get in and move deeper in and take over the core dynamics of a star, because the physicists have all their reasons of stuff. But what I'm saying is you get one of these iron spirals. I think they go out through the equator. This is it's going to have some sort of 3-dimensional thing like the Moxlogic, and I've not done any work at all on the 3-dimensional Penlogic, so I don't know what this is going to translate to in 3 dimensions. But it may very well translate to a large, sort of rotating, slowly spiraling mass of iron that just kind of keeps adding in and adding on to that iron spiral. And the thing is, it's sort of just different, I think, than any of the other Penlogic forms, where it starts to spin and nothing can really get in there and do anything about it. I think it just takes over the structure. And so what in a galaxy, the only way out of this situation is you have to have the whole star go into a red giant phase, and if it's got something past what's it called, the Chandrasekhar, that limit, about 2-something times our sun, then it can explode into a supernova. And when it explodes through a supernova, it can suddenly create lots and lots of elements larger than iron. So somehow the iron atom sets up a barrier, a wall. And this happens both down at the atomic level, where there's a progressive growth of atoms up to the iron atom, and then they just get stuck there. And it happens at the cosmological level. But I think it has to do with this iron spiral that becomes just it's just a giant physical thing. And it sort of caps a growth. The other elements can't really get anything going, because the thing that the physicists don't really explain is once you blow past that iron barrier and you get up to cobalt and all these some of these other ones we're looking at, the krypton, and on up to all these larger atoms, silver and gold and all this kind of stuff, then it goes back to these atoms will grow. They'll continue to sort of add on protons and neutrons and keep growing again. So it's more like there's really a physical barrier there where things get stuck than it is that there's a mathematical barrier of pressure that they just can't get past. It's because they go right back on to adding in the protons and neutrons and continuing to grow up towards the radioactive levels where they start breaking down. But so this is an image of that iron spiral overlaid on a galaxy, and it gives you a question: are galaxies following an iron spiral? Are there basically 5 arms to a galaxy, although, it may be very hard to see or to understand that. I mean, I know there's a lot of galaxies that do not have 5 clear spiral arms or anything, but and are there any galaxies out there? Are there like post-galactic structures that could be galaxies that have exploded past the iron barrier? Is there anything out there? I know they've been making some new discoveries recently with all our telescopes and stuff. So I'm interested to learn more about that. So anyway, I think that is a Penlogic is also playing a very important role there with these very important, significant dynamics going on with the iron atom, and they certainly seem to fit with the noble gases. And so I think valence shell structure is based upon that. You look here at, on the left, I don't know what kind of Penlogic structure carbon has or oxygen has. I think the carbon one in the middle is pretty obvious what it would have. But you can see what their structure, they may have some sort of strange Penlogic structure, but once they form that molecule, the oxygens each get up to just what they want. They each get a nice neon ring, a nice electron ring, very balanced, very relaxed, and the carbon drops down to the helium ring. And so carbon dioxide is the hardest molecule there is to pull apart because it's just completely locked in and content, and nobody's complaining about anything. So the big question is, what are these pentagons? What do they represent? Well, that we really answered in yesterday's Moxlogic video, in the last Moxlogic video. We learned that nature forms into these 5-level systems. And so take our 5-level diagram that we just finished explaining, how it's 5 different time, size, speed levels all locked in together as one structural system. And now look at this diagram, and what we're looking at here is you have an outer person, and this person has a normal resting heartbeat of about 60 beats a minute. But right now he's out for a long run, and while he's running, his heart is racing at about 180 beats a minute. So his heart rate is up about 3 times his normal speed. And so you can see all the energy that's going on, and this has got to affect his internal electric dynamics. And if his organ level, just the second level down of the 5-level system, is already working at 3 times its normal energy level, to give him, in his outer self, he's still locked in with the same time dynamics of the world. A minute is still a minute to him. His energy levels relating to things outside of him, the sidewalk has the same hardness, that sort of stuff. But for the interior level, something has really changed. They may, let's say one heartbeat was to equal 1 month or something, and now they're having 3 months of energy happen in what happens for a normal month. It may still take 3 months of their time. So it may be that somehow it's a time dynamic. He is using up more time energy which is what is powering this whole thing, or it, and the electric, remember that the electric and magnetic energies reset down at smaller levels. All of the different force energies, the time energies, everything reset. And they're all, if the second level is 3 times as much, think what's going on for the atoms inside of the human when he's out running, at 3 times the heart rate. And so I think this Penlogic system is simply a system that is the system that electric energies have to be able to flow up and down between these 5 levels. You would get too much electricity in one level, not enough electricity in another. And so what the pentagons represent is a system that ties in with this Moxlogic system, not just surrounding it with electrons, but building it into the structure that totally goes all the way down to the atomic level, where we see it as valence shell structure, and coming all the way up through our organelles, through our cells, through our organs, and then through our outer self, with some kind of energy sharing system. That's what it really is. That's the phrase I'm looking for, an energy sharing system for moving energies up and down. We've said that a person gets their electricity from their mother. Remember, when you're born out from your mother's body, you're now inside the next larger level, greater mother. So you're always, somehow electricity may always be flowing down from the outside. And I think the valence shell structure is something that sort of locks onto the outside and then flows down inward. But then does time move up? Is time an energy resource that moves up? Does magnetism able to move up or down, or whatever? I mean, there's a lot of questions here. But so that's what I think the pentagons stand for. And there's some question about whether there are more noble gases as you keep going up. The chemists have some ideas of what they could be. Here is, what is the pronunciation of this? It's UBH, and it has 126, and it would be definitely a noble gas, I think. I don't know much about the larger atoms. But so this is some idea of what's going on with valence shell structure, and just explaining, at least giving us the beginning of a geometric set of dynamics for what's happening with the negative energy structure of electrons. The whole system, it has these 6s, the hexagons with the protons and neutrons surrounded, then locked in with these 5s. And I say they're surrounded by 4s. I mean that all the computer dynamics work on the screen, the 4-sided screen. I mean, there are diamond dynamics, which are 4-way dynamics inside the Moxlogic system as well. So it just seems like there's some kind of, sacred geometry going on, where the different numbers, each different number, maybe up through, at least through 9 or something, may have its own logical system. I think we can do some more work on that. 4 has some interesting dynamics going on. Even though the Moxlogic system is 6-sided and the pentagonal stuff, is 5-sided, I think they really relate to the up, down, and right, left, and that's probably more speaking with the computer screen dynamics, because everything in computers is going to work through these screens. That all life is going to look at computer stuff through probably these rectangular screens for the most part. If you look here at the septagon, if you put septagons together, they fit with 14 of them, make a ring that will not fit with anything else. They won't fit with hexagons or pentagons or squares or anything else, and they won't fit with another septagonal ring. So it's just one ring of 14. But it's interesting that the thing the nitrogen atom wants the most, more than anything else, is to bond with another nitrogen. And when they do, they lock together into a pair that is very, very strongly bonded together. So it's like forming a 14, that the 7 protons, and it also has 7 neutrons. So you're getting a pair of 14 total protons and 14 total neutrons locking into something. And the thing that it locks into is not a noble gas. I mean, it's 14, it's not 18, it's not 10. So you wonder if the septagonal dynamics may have something to do with the personality of the nitrogen atom. And look here at the, if you set up an octagonal grid, the octagons wind up with all these little squares in between them, and it ends up working out to be about 2 of those little squares for each octagon, and that almost fits perfectly with water. You wonder, look at the oceans, the ice, how much oxygen favors building some kind of dynamics with water when it has there are lots of other kinds of dynamics that go on with the oxygen atom. It makes hundreds, thousands, millions, or whatever of different kinds of molecules, but it definitely seems to favor forming H2O, and this may sort of explain why. There may be a comfortability where the octagons tie in with the 8 proton oxygen atom, and the little squares tie in with the single hydrogens. And so there may be a natural affinity there or something. So there's probably more we can search into with all this. But for now, thank you for watching this video on the Penlogic system.